Hey everyone, welcome back to Coach Hall Writes. In today's video, we're going to be breaking down the AP Lang Rhetorical Analysis rubric. If we haven't met yet, my name is Coach Hall. I'm an AP Lang teacher from Arkansas, and I make student-friendly AP Lang tutorial videos over here on YouTube and on TikTok as well. In order to understand the rubric for rhetorical analysis, we need to understand what rhetorical analysis actually is. So, for rhetorical analysis, you're going to be given a nonfiction passage. This could be a speech, a letter, an article, or even an excerpt of a longer work of nonfiction. When you're looking at the passage, you're going to want to look for what we call rhetorical choices. This is what the writer is doing. And you want to analyze how the writer makes choices in order to convey a message, develop an argument, or achieve a purpose. You're going to see those phrases in your prompt. Now, if you're watching this video and you're not sure what a rhetorical choice is, don't worry, I have a separate video that breaks it down in much more detail. I'll link that video in the description box below. On the College Board rubric for AP Lang Rhetorical Analysis essays, there are 3 rows. The first row is row A, and this is where students can earn the thesis point. So a thesis is an overarching claim to the essay. And according to the rubric, the thesis can be anywhere in the essay. Now, because the essays on the exam are timed essays, students typically put the thesis as the last sentence of their introductory paragraph. But remember, it can be anywhere in the essay. Now, as an AP Lang teacher of many years and an AP reader, I can say that for exam purposes, it is much easier if the thesis is in the intro. It's easier for you as the student, and it's easier for the person reading your essay. But please keep in mind that when you're reading an article, for instance, the thesis might be later on in the article. It's not always going to be in the intro paragraph. Now, on the rubric, it says that students must identify rhetorical choices in order to earn the thesis point. To be honest, the thesis point is the easiest point on the rubric, at least in my opinion. So when readers are looking at your essay, they're looking for specific rhetorical choices. Most students include 2 to 4 rhetorical choices depending on what they intend to write about. So for the thesis, technically you can include devices, which are nouns. This would be things like repetition, comparison, etc. Now, a rhetorical choice, as opposed to a rhetorical device, is going to be a verb. And so you can take those nouns like repetition and turn it into a verb, repeats, or comparison can become compares. You want to be specific, though. You don't want to just say he compares or he repeats. You want to say what they're comparing or what they're repeating. You can also use other rhetorically accurate verbs to convey what the writer is doing. So some examples would be addresses, presents, acknowledges. Those are a bit more open-ended and they work really well in a thesis. Now, there are lists of rhetorically accurate verbs out there. However, sometimes those lists can be really overwhelming because they have so many words on them. So just kind of keep that in mind. You want to ask yourself, what is the writer doing? And if you have those choices in your thesis, ideally in the verb form, though you will get credit if it's in the noun form, then you have a defensible thesis. However, I like my students to take it one step further. I like them to have not only the choices, but also the specific message, argument, or purpose. For the purposes of this video, anytime you see MAP, M-A-P in all caps on a slide, that stands for message, argument, or purpose. Now, your rhetorical analysis prompt is going to ask you about one of those 3. Starting with the 2020 exam, each College Board prompt for rhetorical analysis uses one of those 3 words, message, argument, or purpose. So identify which one your prompt is asking you about, and you're going to be analyzing that within your essay. And by the way, for the exam, a short intro is fine because as you're going to see when we talk about the body paragraphs, you earn more points in the body of your essay. So we don't want to waste time on a long intro when the clock is ticking. To earn the thesis point, here is a quick sentence frame that you can use. I have other videos about thesis statements if you'd like more information. But for this one, anytime you see something in all caps like speech, that could be speech, it could be a letter. You just have to change it to whatever you're analyzing. And then you've got the audience. You want to put the specific audience there, or you could replace it with the event. So maybe it's not to a specific audience, maybe it's at a specific event. We're trying to make this as specific as possible to reference what we call the rhetorical situation. So we want to make it clear who the speaker is, who the audience is. We need those choices in there. Notice that I have 2 listed. You could add a third if you wanted to. And then the message, argument, or purpose. Now, there are other ways to write a thesis statement. There are other sentence frames out there that you can use, and that's totally okay. The key is to make sure that you have specific choices. And then remember, I like to see the message, argument, or purpose as well. Number 1, it helps you as the student remember what you're supposed to be writing about. And then number 2, it makes it a more complex thesis. So it shows that you have a better understanding of the text because you're actually fully addressing both aspects of the prompt. Now, there are some things that you could write that would not earn the point. So where it says not defensible, if you just say the speaker makes multiple rhetorical choices, that is not defensible because you haven't identified the specific rhetorical choices. Also, if you don't reference the rhetorical choices at all and you just say conveys his message about, and then whatever the topic is, that's not going to be defensible either because remember, the rubric wants choices. Now let's talk about row B, which is evidence and commentary. In this row, you can earn up to 4 points. So we're going to start with the lower scores. To be honest, we don't want to aim for these scores. So you can see just by the information provided that a 1 in row B is not our goal. So if your thesis is your overarching claim, each body paragraph is going to have its own claim. Think of it like a subclaim, the main idea of the paragraph. And so in order to prove that main idea, you need evidence and then you need commentary. So evidence can be in the form of direct quotes or a paraphrase. You want to make sure that if you're quoting the passage, which is a good thing to do, that you include short quotes. Because if you have these long quotes of like 12 to 20 words, you're wasting time writing a lot of words that aren't your own. Many times when I see students quote something that is 12 to 20 words long, whatever their quote is could have been shortened to between 3 to 8 words, let's say. So really zero in on the important part of the quote. You also want to embed the quote into a sentence. Don't just drop the quote in there. Weave it into a sentence of your own. So in order to earn a score of a 1, there is likely going to be some evidence to support the different claims in the essay, but there's not going to be much, if any, commentary. So commentary is when you explain the significance of the evidence. It's the why. So evidence is the what, and commentary is the why. So typically when we see an essay that scores a 1 in evidence and commentary, it's because there is usually some evidence present, but there's not much commentary. And the commentary that is there is really just kind of summarizing what the evidence says. So it's not adding on any new information. It's not interpreting anything. It's just restating the evidence. So one quick fix for this is to add words like shows. You could use synonyms of it like illustrates, highlights, demonstrates. And you could also add a because clause. This is going to help you explain why. And remember, if the commentary is the why and we have more commentary, then we are usually going to be eligible for a higher score. So now let's look at a 2. In my personal opinion, a 2 and a 3 in evidence and commentary are the 2 most common scores. And one thing I want to say as a teacher is that there are multiple ways to earn the same score on the rubric. So what I mean by that is that there is a range of what constitutes a 2. And I think this is important to understand as a student because oftentimes if you write an essay and you see that it gets a 1, 2, 0, so you got your thesis point and you got a 2 in evidence and commentary, you might make some changes the next time you write an essay, but your score might not go up. And that's because you might have made improvements, but you might not have quite done enough to get it to the next number. There's a bit of a jump between a 2 and a 3. So please don't get discouraged if you're getting a 1, 2, 0 on your essays, because it's entirely possible that you could have written your first essay at the lower end of a 2, and then if you wrote another essay that still got a 2 and it was better, it could have been the higher end of a 2, almost a 3. So one of the trademarks of A 2 in row B is the limited or simplistic commentary. So there is going to be specific evidence here. We're going to see direct quotes or paraphrased evidence. That's usually not the issue. The issue is the commentary. So when we say limited or simplistic commentary, we're basically saying that there is commentary present, but it's just scratching the surface. It's really superficial and it's not digging deep enough. So it's doing more than just summarizing what the evidence says, but it's not giving a deep enough interpretation. In essays like this, oftentimes the reader has to work to make the connections. You don't want the reader to have to connect the dots themselves. You want to guide them through the essay. We also see essays with a lot of empty or vague phrasing. So for instance, if you say something like, and this helps him convey his message, that's vague because you haven't said what his message is. Now that's a quick fix because you could do a couple things here. You could say, this helps him convey his message of perseverance. So tell us what the message is, and then add the word because. Tell us why it helps him do that. And then suddenly you went from limited commentary to better commentary. Sometimes students will say, oh, but I put the message in the thesis. That's true, but we need to see that specific message, argument, or purpose in the body paragraphs as well. And you can vary your wording. You can use synonyms, but you want to make sure that you're actually explaining how it helps them convey the message, because that's the prompt. Also, sometimes students will use cliched expressions like paints a picture in the reader's mind, and this is pretty vague as well. For that one specifically, oftentimes if you want to say paints a picture in the reader's mind, you're really talking about their use of detail and word choice. Another one that I didn't put on the slide is tugs on the reader's heartstrings. So if they're tugging on the reader's heartstrings, chances are you're trying to explain how the word choice evokes a particular emotion, and you want to say what that emotion is. I have a separate video about limited commentary if you want more information, but one way to fix it is to add specifics. So tell us who the specific audience is. Don't just say tells the audience. So for instance, if it's graduate students that the person's speaking to, say tells the graduate students. That just shows that you're paying attention to what the passage is actually about. We want to include those specifics of what we call the rhetorical situation: speaker, purpose, audience, context, and exigence. We also want the specific message, argument, or purpose. Like I said, we don't want to just say convey his message, because yes, that is what the prompt might say, but you have to actually tell us what the message is. And then just like we said before, we could add more commentary. So using words like because, in order to, due to the fact that, since, those words can help expand the commentary. So sometimes there is commentary present, it's just not enough. So there might be one sentence of commentary, but we actually want 2, 3, or maybe even 4 sentences of commentary. Another trademark of an essay that typically scores a 2 in row B is that there might be a weak line of reasoning. Now, a line of reasoning is going to be a logical progression of ideas. That's not to say that these essays don't make sense, because quite frankly, they do. It's just that things might not be in a strong order, or it could be that certain claims are left unproven. So for example, many times when I see an essay that scores a 2 in row B, one of the major issues is that the paragraphs are underdeveloped. And this is usually because there's not enough commentary. Also, sometimes the analysis skips around. We really want to try to analyze in chronological order, because remember, the speaker is going to write their speech in a logical way. So rather than going on a scavenger hunt throughout the speech to try to figure out which choices they're making, ask yourself, what are they doing in the beginning, the middle, and the end? And follow that order with your paragraphs. Or if you're doing 2 body paragraphs, you could do like the first half and second half kind of thing. You want to try to cover the whole passage, but if possible, you don't want to be skipping around, because that makes it really disjointed for the person reading your essay as well. So here are some quick ways to fix this. First of all, we want to have consistent references to the message, argument, or purpose. And remember, we want to be specific. So we can't just say message, we got to say what it is. We also can add in transition words or phrases. These can occur within a paragraph. So words like However, therefore, additionally, furthermore, those are all great ones to include as you are writing your paragraph and creating what I like to call layers of evidence and commentary. You can also have transitional phrases that link your paragraphs together. So, for instance, you can use your topic sentences, especially for your second body paragraph and third, if you choose to write a third, to kind of connect to the previous idea and then introduce a new idea. I have a video on rhetorical analysis sentence frames that will be really helpful to demonstrate this. Plus, it'll help you with other commentary sentence frames as well. So be sure to use those transition words. And then, as I said before, we want to analyze chronologically because following the speaker's line of reasoning helps you create a line of reasoning as well. All right, now we're going to talk about a 3 in row B, evidence and commentary. This is the goal. We want to earn a 3 or a 4 in evidence and commentary. When I think of papers that earn a 3 in row B, I think of papers that typically have one strong paragraph that does its job. It really explains how the choices help the writer convey a message, develop an argument, or achieve a purpose. But the other body paragraphs, whether it's one more or two more, they're almost there, but not quite there. So the other paragraphs might be inconsistent or vague. They do have evidence and commentary, but the evidence and commentary reads more like what we were talking about with a 2. So if there's one paragraph that really elevates the essay, that is how we can work from a 2 to a 3 in evidence and commentary. It's also possible that in an essay that scores a 3 in evidence and commentary, that because there's one strong paragraph and the other ones are close, that there might be commentary that isn't really supporting a key claim. So essentially, there might be a claim that goes unproven. It's just not developed enough. And I'm going to be really honest here. When I understood this as a teacher, one of the things I realized that was going to be a game changer for my students was getting them to understand how to write a solid paragraph. Because it just takes one adequate paragraph in order to be in contention for a 3 in row B. So my advice to you is to make sure that you are analyzing how the choices help convey the message, argument, or purpose, and also to be considering what we call the rhetorical situation. So one question you should ask yourself is, why does the speaker make this choice for this audience on this occasion? Now, I've used the term rhetorical situation multiple times in this video, and chances are, if you're still a little bit new to AP Lang or new to rhetorical analysis in general, you might not know what that is. So I've defined it as speaker, purpose, audience, context, exigence. But if you want more information on the rhetorical situation, I do have other videos that will help you because it breaks it down in more detail. One of the other things that we want to think about with a 3 in row B is that there's going to be a clear claim in the topic sentence, and usually that claim adds the why. So for instance, instead of just saying something like, the speaker makes a comparison, we would see something like, in order to, and then whatever the purpose is, the speaker compares blank to blank because. So phrases like in order to, since, because, those help you convey the why. And in a stronger paper, we're going to see the what and the why in the topic sentence. We're also going to see specific evidence. So remember, we want those short, direct quotes. We don't want these huge, long quotes that take up a lot of space. We want to devote our time to writing better commentary, not copying a long quote. Your evidence can also be a paraphrase. So remember, that's when you put it in your own words. I like to see at least 1 or 2 small direct quotes per paragraph, but sometimes it's just easier to paraphrase the evidence. That's a choice that you need to make as a writer. We want to make sure that the evidence we're choosing clearly proves the claim. So one question I ask my students when they write a claim is I ask them, okay, what is the best evidence to prove this claim? Now that might seem like a really obvious question, but sometimes when we are planning our essays, we don't necessarily think about the best evidence to prove the claim. We just think about some quote that proves it. So really ask yourself, what is going to be the best evidence to prove my claim? Because you want to convince the reader that your claim is accurate. Now, evidence should be followed by commentary. And so stronger commentary is going to analyze specific word choice and details within the quote. So you might have a quote that is, let's say, 5 to 8 words long. Really unpack that quote. Why are they using certain words within that quote? So an example might be saying something like mentioning, and then you refer to a shorter version of your quote allows the speaker to, and you can end that sentence in a bunch of different ways. You don't have to say allows the speaker to, but using the word mentioning and then saying the quote, that can really help you dig into the word choice. That was another game changer for my students, is realizing that instead of just having a quote in your paragraph, you want to really make sure that you're unpacking the word choice or details of the quote. So really ask yourself, why did I choose this quote in the first place? What is it showing? Why did the speaker say this? And ask yourself, okay, what words stand out? Because remember, word choice creates tone. And so this is going to give us more mileage, if you will, with the evidence that we're choosing. And I think that's one of the things that students sometimes struggle with, is they don't know what to say for the commentary. Well, if you're analyzing specific word choice within your quote and you're really thinking about why they said that or wrote that, you're going to generate more commentary. And I know I've already said this in the video, but it's worth repeating again. We want to have more commentary than evidence. And you could add phrases like because, since, or due to the fact that. One of the things that I have my students sometimes do in class is I have them highlight their evidence in one color and their commentary in another color. And this is because sometimes we need that visual to make sure that we're including more commentary than evidence. So usually if you're using 2 colors to color code, it's going to look like stripes on your paper. You're going to have evidence, then commentary, evidence, then commentary. So whatever color you choose for commentary, if you're highlighting your paper, you want to see more of that color. It's also something I do when I'm grading papers sometimes, is I will take out 2 highlighters of my own and I will highlight my students' essays as I'm scoring their paper, just so I can see that visual. All right, now let's talk about a 4, which is the highest score in this row. So for a 3, we said that one paragraph was good, but the other ones had shortcomings. A 4 is going to be consistent. There's going to be uniform development for all body paragraphs. So basically, they're all equally good. Whether there are 2 body paragraphs or 3 body paragraphs, it doesn't matter, but they're all equally good. And to be equally good, they're referencing a specific message, argument, or purpose. The essay itself is going to analyze the whole passage. Now, when I say that, I don't mean that you have to analyze every single paragraph, but what I mean is we don't want to skip over major parts of the paragraph. So for instance, if we're analyzing chronologically and we're analyzing beginning, middle, end, we don't want to only analyze the first couple paragraphs of the speech and then not address the end in our essay. An essay that scores a 4 in evidence and commentary is also going to have meaningful analysis of specific words and details, just like we were talking about for a 3, except the difference is now it's much more consistent. Now let's talk about the most challenging point on the rubric, the sophistication point. One of the most common questions I get from students is, how do I earn the sophistication point? Last year, I went live each week before the exam over on TikTok and here on YouTube. There was always someone in the comments asking about the sophistication point. And I think it's great for students to know how to earn it. But I do want to be very clear. I don't think this is the priority in terms of the rubric. In fact, in many cases, I don't have my students even think about sophistication for majority of the first semester. And that's because I believe the evidence and commentary points are much more important. So there are 3 different ways that you can earn the sophistication point for rhetorical analysis. And I'm going to explain the gist of how it works, but I do have other videos that go in more detail. And like I said, if you're watching this video at the beginning of the school year, this is not your priority. However, one way to earn the sophistication point is to situate the issue in a broader context, meaning you're going to go beyond the scope of the passage. So there's a couple ways that you can do this. One is to examine the historical context. If you happen to know outside information about the time period, you might include this relevant information in your intro or your conclusion. Sometimes you can even squeeze it into the body paragraphs in different ways. Also, one question that you might ask yourself, specifically if the passage has a clear message, is how is this message relevant to society today? You could perhaps examine that in the conclusion paragraph. Now, I want to be clear, conclusion paragraphs are not mandatory. That's another really popular question. Do I need to write a conclusion? For the AP Lang exam, the answer is no. It's not mandatory. It is not at all referenced on the rubric anywhere. Now, just because you reference the historical context or just because you examine the relevance of the message in society today does not guarantee the sophistication point, because your essay has to be sophisticated throughout. You can't just have one magical sentence that earns the point. However, sometimes when you're working toward more sophisticated writing and you're trying some of these techniques, even if you don't earn the sophistication point, it makes your essay better and it can potentially help your commentary. The second way that you can earn the sophistication point is by examining the complexity or tension within the passage. There are multiple ways to do this, but my favorite way to have students do this is to examine the tensions that exist in the speaker-audience relationship. Now, I don't think this particular tip works for every single passage, but for some passages where there might be some existing tension in the relationship between the speaker and audience, that might be something that you want to examine. Now, for the complexity, you might want to think about the situation as a whole, like why they're giving the speech and what's happening and how that's relevant to the audience. So that's another way to earn the sophistication point. Honestly, if I think about the sophistication points that I've awarded to my own students, I typically award it for situating the issue in a broader context. I don't typically award it for complexity and tension as much. Now, the third way to earn the sophistication point is to have a vivid and descriptive style. And there are different techniques that you could use to improve your style, but again, it doesn't guarantee the sophistication point. So one tip would be to incorporate adjectives and adverbs to your writing to make it more precise. So a quick example of this would be, instead of saying he asserts, add an adverb there. He logically asserts, or he boldly asserts, something like that. Now, remember, just adding in one single word is not going to help you earn the sophistication point. It has to be consistent. But if you're looking to be a stronger writer, adding in adjectives and adverbs is a great way to make your writing more precise. Something else you can do to improve your style is to incorporate advanced punctuation. I love seeing students use colons and dashes correctly in their essays, and you don't want to overdo it. However, if you can do it in a way that helps convey meaning, it's a breath of fresh air. I have separate videos on my channel about how to use colons and dashes correctly. I would also consider semicolons advanced punctuation. I just don't think they have the same wow factor as colons and dashes. And also, if you can use commas to offset appositive phrases or non-restrictive clauses, that extra information, that can help the flow of your essay as well. You really want to make sure that you are varying your syntax. So you want to make sure that you have different sentence structure. Because if you have the same sentence structure over and over again, your essay actually gets really choppy. You can also, as a student, make rhetorical choices. So you're analyzing rhetorical choices for rhetorical analysis, but in some cases, students can make those rhetorical choices. So you could have meaningful repetition or a meaningful comparison. Making those rhetorical choices in a timed essay is much harder to do, so don't force it. But just know that when you're writing an essay, you are also making rhetorical choices as well. All right, there you have it. That is a breakdown of the AP Lang Rhetorical Analysis rubric. If you found this video helpful, please make sure that you hit that thumbs up button. Also, be sure to check out the description box below. If you're new to AP Lang and you heard some terms in this video that you didn't quite understand yet, that's totally okay. I have separate videos for all of those concepts, and I would love to share that information with you. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, happy writing!